Today we're going to take a look at some of the old classic LEGO Star Wars minis from the Episode 2 era. The 2003 Mini Republic Gunship set 4490 and the 2004 Mini 4495, the ATTE Mini. I'm going to look at the design and the features of these things, kind of talk about whether or not you should buy these now. So first, we've got the Republic Gunship on the left. This thing originally retailed for $7, and it contained 102 pieces, although not all of those go in the gunship, and I'll touch on that in a minute. Nowadays, that $7 with inflation would be about $11.48. Let's just take a look at this thing. First of all, it looks the part, I think. It's got the shape down pat, even if it does have that kind of classic Lego style with all the studs and the kind of simpler building techniques, at least for the time. But really, aesthetically, this is a great little mini, and I love how you can kind of still tell that it's from this era, the early 2000s, but that it still looks really good. That's something that was kind of rare, I find. Either they're just a little too rudimentary to look great usually, so this is nice for a change. Looking at the back, we have a couple of bright red pieces that pop out a little more than I would like. There is no bright red on the gunship in universe, so that's a little distracting. We have the doors permanently in the open position here. Well, actually, this might be the closed position now that I look at it, because if that's open, then that would be a teeny tiny little compartment for figures. Maybe they're about halfway open. And by figures, of course, I mean people. You're obviously not going to put any figures in this since it's a mini model. I'm just saying proportionally, this troop carrying area would be really tiny. So perhaps this is doors half open. We'll just say that. It's got the little bubble turrets, both here, the manned turrets and the auto turrets on the wings represented pretty well. And the way that I'm handling it, you can probably already see some of the shortcomings with this vehicle, and that is the wings. They are very loosely attached. If we were to go in there, we would see that they're actually attached by a Technic piece on a loose Technic pin connection, which means they can just wobble all day long, and that is something that's pretty much horrifically inaccurate, as the wings don't really wobble like that in universe. Certainly not like back and forth like this, and you can see just from lightly handling it, they're going to go everywhere. And that's something that I really dislike about this model, to be honest. In general, the model is just pretty loose, unfortunately. The wings are the worst example. And if we look more at that, we can actually see they're simply connected also by a loose Technic pin connection here. Well, this one has more friction, but this still should not have this degree of freedom here. Just knocking it slightly, and now your ship looks wrong. So I think if you just leave this thing on display, fortunately, the looseness of the wing connection means that gravity will balance it if you're not touching it. But if you want to touch it at all, it's going to go all out of whack. And the wings, too, will stay in a incorrect position, unfortunately, since this is a connection with a bit more friction. We have the ball turret represented well on the back as well. We have the engines, they look good. This piece on top here, it might be an accurate detail, I'm not sure, but it pops off really easily. This is gonna, I'm guessing on most people's sets who had this from back in the day, that's probably already missing for them. That's probably been missing for a long time. The doors don't open and close either. I mean, that would be really ambitious for a mini model from 2003, but just to clear that up, the turrets on the side have the slightest bit of rotation, although if you rotate these too much, they're also going to pop off. They're not super solidly on there, and just by the nature of the connection, they only have about 20 degrees of rotation. The other issue with the looseness of this model, I would say, is the cockpits are just connected by this clip here, so they can really have a lot more freedom to move in ways that you wouldn't want if you like that. You can kind of see it's just totally off center, and that's staying in that position. I'm not a fan of that, even though the look is pretty good, especially for the time. As a note, what I was going to mention about those extra pieces in the gunship is this kind of promotional that they were doing in 2003 with these mini builds, which was each of, I believe, 4 different sets would include a quarter of a miniature Y-Wing. So if I pull out the instructions, you can see there the 4 models that I'm talking about: Millennium Falcon AT-AT, Public Gunship, Republic Gunship, and the MTT. Each one contains a little bit of that mini Y-Wing model, which actually looks pretty darn nice. And this is the chunk that you'll get with the gunship. So overall, I mean, if you have massive nostalgia, it's not terrible, but we'll come back in a bit of an overview after we're done with the ATTE, the other miniature set that we're looking at today. This one was from 2004. It was also $7 at the time, and it was a whopping total of 63 pieces, so a lot smaller. I mean, it's not a ton smaller. You can see the size right there. I think it's actually about correct, probably proportionally to the gunship. It's just a slightly smaller piece count, but that's okay. It has these really nice printed pieces on all 4 corners, which is, I think, fantastic, that make up the shaping of the body. Yes, that is all printed. Remember the glory days. But anyways, aside from the printed pieces, this thing is not crazy accurate looking. It looks more accurate to the play scale Lego ATTE than anything. It's got this weird double cockpit design, which is just not accurate. The ATTE had a single cockpit in the front, so not really sure what that's about. The cannon here is a cannon, but it doesn't really look like one that's supposed to be manned. Yeah, it's just limitations of the pieces that they had to work with at the time, I guess. It rotates up and down, though, so that's nice. You could point it all the way up if you wanted to, but I wouldn't recommend it. This is also going to pop off really easily, because it's just a single 1x2 connection there. So we've got all the turrets represented here, though, all these little ball turrets. The legs can articulate a bit, not much. Just kind of like, if you wanted to mess around with that, you could, but you're not going to get like a lot of enjoyment out of it, I don't think. Obviously, the feet rotate too, but so you may be able to sit it even lower to the ground than I have it if you want, but I don't see much point in doing that. Overall, I think this is a better model than the gunship, just because it doesn't have that same looseness. That means all various pieces of the model could be out of alignment at any given time. This one is more solid. I think even if you dropped this, not too many pieces would probably break off. It's kind of sturdy. Oddly enough, too, it has this open space here. It's kind of funny. You could really stick a clone in there if you wanted. In fact, you could kind of pop him in there and you have a microfighter. Not that I care about that or have ever bought a microfighter ever, but if you want to do it, it's there. Now, if we look kind of at an overview of these two, are these worth buying nowadays? And to answer that, we need to look at the price that you're going to have to pay for these nowadays. The average of the last 6 months sales on Bricklink has the gunship at used about $16.19, or new in the it's not really a box, but new in the pack at $31.16. For the ATTE, it would be about $16.28 used and about $29.59 new, and that's US dollars. At that price, if you're really nostalgic, I think that's the one factor that could kind of turn the tide. I have massive nostalgia for this ATTE since it was one of the first, maybe even the first Lego Star Wars sets that I had. And of course, I love the Republic Gunship too. I love the look of it, which is what enticed me to buy that more recently. Although, I gotta say that one is a bit more disappointing. The prices aren't outrageous at this point, but I would probably lean towards just buying, for your 20 or 30 bucks, just another, 501st battle pack or something. But, if you're nostalgic for this era of Lego and you're not ever gonna move this or touch it or bump it ever, they're decent. If you don't mind the inaccuracies on the ATTE and the total just looseness of the build of the gunship, they're not bad. Really, that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please consider leaving a like if you did, and I'll be back with another video on something later. Bye-bye.